ready.
Welcome to another episode of Buff in the Rough. Today we're going to talk to Dustin Todd about competition squirrel hunting, the different breeds of squirrel dogs, how to prepare and cook squirrel for the kitchen table, and a lot more. Help me welcome Dustin Todd to the program. Well, hey Dustin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. I really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us today on a little different subject than what we're used to talking about. And today you're going to help us and give us kind of an intro into squirrel hunting and kind of let us look into a different world than what we're used to talking about. So for the folks that maybe don't know who Dustin Todd is, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into squirrel hunting?
Yeah, I'm Dustin Todd from Denton, North Carolina. I'm 38. I've been messing with dogs pretty much all my life, but mainly coon dogs. And I'd say probably in the mid, 2015-ish, a guy I was working with at the time, competition squirrel hunting. Mm-hmm. And he talked me into handling one of his dogs at a competition up in Ohio. And within the first 10 minutes of the cast, man, I'll be honest, I was hooked. So after that weekend, I come home, and what coon dogs or dogs I was starting on coons, if they wouldn't tree a squirrel, I was trying to sell them and trying to find me something else.
I hear you.
I mean, it really was. It was kind of like a light switch, if you will. It was just like, wow, this is where the action's at, kind of deal. So.
Well, there's no hesitation. You were just all in right from the start.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Dustin, for folks that maybe don't know much about squirrel dogs, and again, the audience that we have so far is just mostly beagles and rabbit hunting, and we talk about other kinds of hunting too from time to time. But beagles are beagles. It's one breed. Some of them may be 15 inches, some of them may be 13 inches. They come in a few different colors to boot. But now, from my understanding, squirrel dogs, there's several different types in there. There's feist and curs and maybe something called a tree and cur, if I'm not mistaken. Could you work us through what some of those major breeds are within the squirrel dog hunting circles?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you got basically three main categories, which would be a feist, a cur, and a hound. And then you got variations off of each one of those. Tree and feist, which is a feist crossed with something. And then you have a cur, a tree and cur, which is typically a hound crossed in with a cur, but it could be other dogs. People add bird dogs, such. Anything really added to a cur makes it a tree and cur, technically. And then you got hounds and hound crosses, which a lot of people are crossing hounds with bird dogs, which technically just makes it a hound cross. Mm-hmm. But it all kind of stems on what your style of hunting is, or what kind of dog you would be hunting, basically, whether it be competition or pleasure hunting or just small patches of wood, walk hunting or road hunting. And there's also a Western Siberia Leka, which is kind of newer. It's getting kind of popular, but it's a Russian hunting dog, similar to a elk hound, which has been around for a while around the United States. But the Western Siberia Lekas are kind of newer. Well, that's generally kind of where you start with as far as the different breeds. And like I said, they all have different hunting styles completely. So it's kind of all of what you're looking for.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. So for a successful hunting dog, squirrel dog, what kind of traits are required for it to be successful? I know they have to track, I know they have to tree, and they have to have like some drive to them to go out and find the game. But when you're sizing up a dog that you're interested in putting your time and energy into, what do you like to see in a dog?
To be honest with you, my main thing, especially putting out a puppy, would be natural ability. Mm-hmm. If it's kind of got a natural ability to want to tree in general, I can start there pretty easily. Mm-hmm. But obviously, going back to the different styles, there's mainly your feists are going to be tree by sight, sound, and scent, but very few, I would say, probably tree by scent. They're mainly using their ears and their eyes. Mm-hmm. I prefer a dog that uses all three. I prefer a good nose because there's going to be a lot of days where squirrels aren't stirring so well, or they're just laid up and they're not moving. So a dog with eyes aren't necessarily going to tree as much as one that can smell it.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand what I'm saying. And I don't want to have an overpowered nose where it's tracking the squirrel and barking a lot on the track. You want kind of quiet, if you will, on the track, just to keep the squirrels from being spooked and timbering before it gets to a tree that it went up.
So the feist is kind of a more eyes than anything else. So they're treeing a lot by sight, and maybe they're a little closer hunter.
Sight and ears.
Sight and ears.
Yes.
And then so your curs and you mentioned hounds or crosses in there too. So that's when you introduce more nose into it.
Correct. And like you were getting at, the feist typically. Now, when I say typically, this is going to be like typically. And there are some outliers in the groups that'll do different, but a feist typically isn't going to hunt very deep in general. Curs are kind of a mid-range dog, and again, there's some that'll go out deeper. And hounds, for the most part, when you hunt them on squirrels, aren't a very deep dog as far as getting out in the yardage. Like coon hunting wise, let's just say average dog is running 800-900 yards out. Well, when you squirrel hunting, he might go 400 at the deepest. And that contributes to having more game as far as compared to coon hunting wise. Kind of getting off top of the foot there. It's kind of what's at.
So with the treeing cur, is that a cross between curs and what?
Primarily, it's a cross between a cur and a hound.
And a hound, okay. Well, what does that give you? What does the hound put into that breeding? What are you looking for to add?
It gives you a better nose, a louder mouth, and a more I'd say a harder tree dog. And honestly, the way I look at it is because I prefer in my treeing curs, I prefer a heavier hound. And to me, I'm adding the cur to kind of slow the hound down. You know what I mean? To not necessarily take the drive out of it, but take the legs out. So it's not wanting to range out so far or bypass something trying to get away from other dogs. Because generally, squirrel dogs in general are going to be independent, competition or pleasure dog. Typically, a squirrel dog is going to be independent. Just from what I've seen, for the most part, they're independent by nature. Especially in squirrel hunting, you want them to be independent. You want to have their own squirrel doing their own thing.
And as you've been out there for over these years that you've been squirrel hunting and gotten into the competition side, and we'll hit the competitive stuff here in a minute. But as you figured out what you need to be successful, have you figured out what some of your favorite bloodlines are? If you're studying pedigrees, certain hounds or certain bloodlines you like to see.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not one of those people that chase the bloodlines. I prefer just a good solid dog, no matter what bloodline comes out of it. Saying that, there are some lines of dogs that have been proven to produce some pretty good stuff. There's one called Woody, which is probably, I think, the all-time winningest squirrel dog out there right now. He's put out some pretty good dogs. There's Deep River Kennels. They put out some pretty good dogs. And I'm trying to think, Hummer, which is a pretty famous cur dog. He's put out several world champions out of him. But yeah, there are a few bloodlines out there. But like I said, I'm more one of those show me the meat kind of people. I don't really care what the papers say. I just want to know what the dog does.
You're my kind of guy. So just on the few that you mentioned, the Woody, the Deep River, and Hummer, where are those hounds? Are they in the southeast? Are they in the Midwest? Where are those hounds?
The Hummer dog is out of West Virginia. Deep River Kennels is actually right outside of Greensboro, North Carolina, and Woody is out of Kentucky. And Woody is a hound, the Hummer dog is a cur, and Deep River runs treeing curs. So that's three different lines there, and there's others too that I know I'm not mentioning. I can't think of names off the top of my head, but
sure.
The NSD's got like a DNA breeding program, and quite a few people would got into that, and it's really starting to bring out some really good dog breeders and people producing some really nice quality squirrel dogs. Which I think that, again, like I said, I'm not a paper chaser, but the DNA deal really helps out as far as knowing exactly where these dogs are coming from and what it's coming out of. And a lot of these are crosses that people are starting to make that are doing phenomenal. Just because you're adding in where a certain breed might have a weakness.
Sure.
And that's kind of the whole idea, especially like kind of if you compare it to a race car, you're adding the best parts to the best parts trying to make the best car, the fastest car. And that's kind of what people are doing in the squirrel dog competition world, if you will. And it kind of trickles down to the pleasure dogs as well, because, I mean, it's just a faster approach to squirrel hunting, basically. The main difference between a competition and pleasure hunting dogs is just faster.
Well,
Same job.
Well, let's talk about competition a little bit, because I bet you do a lot of pleasure hunting too. If nothing else, you're out there hunting your hounds to get them ready for the competitions. But I've got a feeling you like to compete. So,
yes.
For those of us that may not understand how competition squirrel hunting works, could you tell us a little bit about how you keep score, how many dogs draw out at a time, and not like every little detail, but just generally speaking, how do you compete and how do you keep score?
Okay, so basically you show up to the hunt, and they draw out in cast, and the cast typically consists of 3 dogs. Depending now, if the number gets down, there can be a 2-dog cast, but typically it's a 3-dog cast. There's never a 4-dog cast at all. You draw out, and then of course you go to a spot in the woods. You have a first round, and the second round is typically an hour and a half, so it's 90-minute rounds. Turn all 3 dogs loose. There's no strike points like in coon hunting. It's strictly tree. So dog trees, you get in there, it's got to hold the tree for 2 minutes, which means it's got to bark consistently to get you to the tree for 2 minutes. While you're walking into the tree, the dog's got to be at the tree showing tree and cannot come within 15 steps off the tree. So primarily you want a dog that typically is on the tree treeing pretty hard. Like I said, you want one that's going to be able to get you to bark plenty enough to get you there, because there are some time limits and stuff like that if your dog quits barking. But you get in there, you list your dog. You got 5 minutes to search for the squirrel. You got a 90-foot radius from that tree that the dog is on to search for a squirrel if the squirrel is in that 90-foot radius. Compared to coon hunting, the coon has got to be in the tree. Well, of course, the squirrel can timber out to another tree. So you kind of get a little bit of a play area there to find the squirrel. And basically, you do that for 90 minutes, and the one with the most plus points at the end of the hunt wins, or end of the cast wins. Now, if you don't find a squirrel in that area, but there is a nest, a den, or a place a squirrel could be and you couldn't see, then it's circled up.
Okay.
And a circle is pretty much a 0 unless everybody has circle trees, which doesn't happen very often. You're going to at least tree 1 or 2 squirrels in a cast for the most part. And minus trees typically only happens if the dog leaves a tree. I don't think I've ever seen a dog tree, like one tree in the middle of the field, and had no squirrel or no place for it to hide or anything like that and get minus. I would say that's a super, super rare occasion if it ever would happen. Now, if a tree's off game, it just gets deleted. If it chases off game, it gets minus. And they got this new rule in one of these organizations: if they tree a cat, whether it's a feral cat, such and such, it's a minus as well.
Okay.
Typically that would have been deleted, because mainly a lot of these places, especially up north, you're hunting like around some big farm areas and stuff like that, and there's a pretty large feral cat population in some of these places, and man, you can get in some bad spots and tree a bunch of cats.
I bet so. Well, thanks for explaining a few things, because I had some questions about timbering, what that was like, because squirrels will jump to other trees, and if the dog doesn't see it or doesn't hear it, they're busy treeing really hard and they're loud, they may not see the squirrel move. And so
right.
I think it's kind of nice that you have that what'd you say, 90 feet or something like that?
Yeah,
That's
it's
a nice
9 feet.
little area that hopefully you could find them in, even if they did jump out into another tree or move over to another tree. I think that sounds really fascinating. Another point you made was about the deleted points and off game, because I was thinking that a lot of people use the same dogs that they hunt squirrels to hunt coons with like cur dogs. I hunted with a guy a number of years ago, some of the nicest coon curs that I'd ever seen, because we went out and treed squirrels all day, then took a break, ate dinner, and went back with the same dogs and treed coons that night, and just had a ball. So
Right.
I don't know how they knew how to do that, but boy, they did, and they put on a show. But that's fascinating that you give them a little wiggle room there too.
And I'll be honest, and this is in my experience, for the most part, a mountain cur is pretty good at swapping over from squirrel to coon.
Mm-hmm.
No issues. The treeing curs, I've seen them kind of, like, they will be really good. Let's say squirrels, and you switch them over to coons. It'd take a little bit to get them to where they tree coons, because they're still smelling the squirrel scent, and
Mm-hmm.
their brain doesn't work quite. In my opinion, they're a little dumber than a mountain cur. I know that's not the correct term, but a mountain cur to me is a pretty smart dog as far as when it comes to stuff like that. They kind of know when and what you're hunting. A mountain cur is a very versatile dog as far as hunting wise.
Well, at these competitions, do you bait? Do you put out feeders to draw in squirrels? In the coonhound world, I know that that's a big thing to draw in the coons. It just helps you build up bigger scores, and that's kind of the name of the game. The folks with the highest
Yeah,
points win. So, do you do the same thing with squirrel dogs?
typically not. To be honest with you, I don't think I've ever been to a place where they baited up for squirrels. And a lot of these bigger hunts, it's like it'll be on wildlife refuge
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But like the hunts that I put on, I primarily during deer season I hunt on. I think our guide cast at the URA National Forest. But after deer season, I got private farms that I never shoot squirrels out. So it's kind of like overloaded population almost. That generally you just try to take them to a place that generally has thick squirrels. So
Okay.
yeah, the baiting and feeding, it doesn't work so much well in those type situations. Yeah, squirrel hunt, I'd imagine. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I've never been to a place where they baited for a hunt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it seems like there's squirrels everywhere. Yeah, it's just
There
I
are.
don't know. They're just they seem to be really plentiful around here. But
Yeah,
as you
that's kind of the other attraction to it compared to coon hunting. It's just
mm-hmm.
a lot more.
Well, as you've been out there over the years, I know you've hunted all over the place, and you've gone through a lot of different dogs over the years. Could you tell us about maybe one of your favorite squirrel dogs that you've had personally? And then, in addition to that, as you've been out there competing, what were some of the best ones that you've competed against over the years?
I got you. Probably my favorite dog, and I still have her today. She was the first mountain cur I've ever got. She's not registered mountain cur, but she is a full-blood mountain cur. Her name's Barn Cat. She's not very big. She's not a very pretty-looking dog. She's just a dark brindle, nothing flashy.
Mm-hmm.
But probably one of the best squirrel treeingest dogs I've been in the woods with. Not just because she's mine, but I've hauled this dog all over the eastern side of the United States. And, I mean, I've not had her go anywhere and not tree squirrels. And I've let people borrow her, take their friends and their kids out hunting with her. She'll hunt for anybody. She's just one of those all-around good dogs, good in the kennel, good in the house,
Mm-hmm.
good everywhere. And it's probably the same thing in the rabbit dog world. They say you usually only get one once in a lifetime dog.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but she's probably it. It was like the second one I ever got.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to train her or nothing. I walked this dog out in the woods at 3 and 4 months old, and 4 months old she treated her first squirrel, and I shot it out to her, and it was game on ever since. And I've been, like I said, I've taken her to Ohio and like a 10.5 hour ride to Ohio and Indiana, and park in the game land parking lot, turn her loose and go tree 10 or 11 squirrels within an hour. after riding 10 so hours in a box. She knows when she comes out of that box, it's game time. She's getting older now, but she has not slowed down whatsoever. But the downside to her is I've never been able to breed her.
No.
She comes in heat. She is a bobcat. She don't want nothing around her, and she will eat up another dog. And I'm debating on having her AI, but I just don't know.
Well, that may be the only choice you have.
Yeah, yeah, but also too, the Mother Nature part of it's telling me there might be a reason why she don't even have pups. It's a tough call on that. But I'd say probably the best dog I ever been was that Woody dog I mentioned earlier. He's won 4 or 5 world hunts. I think he's won a truck, a 4-wheeler. I think he might even won 2 trucks. I'm not 100% sure on that. Close to $100,000. Just a phenomenal dog. And I seen him in action twice. I beat him once, and my head was bigger than ever because I thought I'd done doing something. But come to find out, the dog had pneumonia at the time, so I still felt good because I beat him. But then when I seen him put on the show at, I think it was the 2021 World Hunt, USDC World Hunt, I mean, it was phenomenal. It's hard to explain. The dog literally halfway through the hunt decided he was going to take over and just started treating squirrels one after another. And nobody else could do anything, just sit there and watch him take it, because it was pretty nice. And he's kind of like the controversial dog. Like when he first started, he was a hound, and hounds at first weren't looked at as squirrel dogs. They were looked at as tree dogs, wood monsters, not necessarily treeing squirrels, just making trees. And he was one that kind of put it on the map that hounds can treat a mess out of squirrels. And not all hounds can, but that's with all dogs. Not all dogs can treat squirrels good, but some of them that can do it really good are just phenomenal when you get to see them in action.
Well, Dustin, for folks that are considering looking at squirrel hunting, because even if the folks that are listening beagle hunt primarily, everybody's into something else. You know, it seems like even if you have beagles and you're rabbit hunting, you're slipping off and going deer hunting or turkey hunting or dove hunting or you name it. Maybe they want a coonhound tied out back or a squirrel dog tied out back. How hard is it to get into squirrel hunting? I mean, what should people expect to pay for a well-bred puppy or a started dog or even a finished dog? You know, what could they expect to pay for that? And is there any kind of special equipment you need? Because most people that have hounds or hunting dogs are going to have a dog box. They're probably going to have some kind of GPS tracker. But I've noticed squirrel dogs have like orange vests. Some of them hunt with orange vests. That's something I haven't seen before. But is there anything special out there, equipment-wise, that they would need to? And I know that was a lot that I just asked.
Oh, you're fine. So like a puppy, I would say a puppy, a good registered puppy would probably start you around $350 to $500, and that would be from a feist to a mountain cur to a tree cur, and probably a hound. Now you get into the competition dogs that's won a lot, you're looking closer to $1,000 probably for some of these puppies out there. So that's kind of what geared me back towards when I first got into it. I wasn't looking to spend a lot of money, so I got a dog with no papers, and generally you can find those relatively cheap. And probably a good started dog, and again, once you get to started dog or finished dogs, papered or not papered, I've seen the prices not really vary too much. A good started dog will probably range you from about $800 to $1,500, maybe a little higher depending on the bloodline. A good finished dog, if you spend less than $2,500, I'd probably question what you bought. Just because if a man really put that kind of time and effort into a squirrel dog, especially in these days and age, $2,500 ain't gonna cover much.
I got you.
And that's just being truthful. I mean, and I wouldn't consider anything under probably 2.5, 3 years old finished. A 1.5-year old dog is definitely not a finished dog by no means. There's a lot of ups and downs you're going to have with some squirrel dogs, just because of the squirrel movement and how squirrels are. you're always going to have patience. I guess that's the main word I'm looking for anything. But when you get a finished dog, you should have no question whatsoever. It should be a dog that's going to hunt every time you turn loose, kind of thing. But as far as equipment wise, technically, depending on if you got you a vise that didn't really range out, or you wouldn't even need a tracker, but a tracker if you needed one. A box, again, that's optional. A lot of these people I've seen haul them in their trucks in the cab with them, because your mountain curs and your vise are smaller. They're beagle size, and you don't need a pack. You just need one. So typically, a lot of these people make them family pets as well as hunting dogs. So the box, like I said, it'd be optional. Obviously a gun, but the vest that you were talking about, that goes back to the more action packed. You got to have something to carry your squirrel in. And keep your garment and a water bottle and stuff. Mainly that's probably what you're seeing as far as these vests. But the backpack, I'm sure the rabbit dogs, y'all carry vests because the rabbit skin.
Sure.
It's probably similar. But other than that, you're just going to need some time if you're going to get anything other than a finished dog. If you get a puppy or you get a started dog, if you don't have time, you're wasting your time and your money because you're not going to have nothing. They don't make any kind of dog in the kennel. I would definitely say it's almost like a boat. What's better than a boat is a friend with a boat. It's cheap. So if you don't know, if it's something you want to get into, find somebody with a squirrel dog and definitely go hunting a few times. Because it might be fun the first time, and then you go the second time, and you might tree one squirrel in an hour, and you're like, this might not be for me. Because not every day is going to be a good day.
That's right.
Squirrel hunt as far as treeing game. You got to really have the love of a dog to be dedicated in the squirrel hunting world, I'd say.
Well, that brings me to another question, is really how kid-friendly is squirrel hunting. And one of the nice things about beagling and chasing rabbits, it's not that tough on the kids, I think, for the most part. It's during the daytime versus coon hunting at nighttime. You're not crossing big water or anything when you're rabbit hunting. And kids can be loud. They can be out there cutting up and throwing rocks and playing or whatever too if they get bored. But how kid-friendly is squirrel hunting?
It's great for kids. It's probably one of the best outdoor activities, I'd say, as far as hunting-wise for kids, just because they can be loud, they can throw sticks, they can play in the dirt, they can do whatever, and it's not going to bother the squirrel dogs. And you got them outside, you're walking for the most part, or you might stand still for a little bit, but just because there is so many squirrels, you're going to have a lot more action, a lot more to keep them entertained. And then say while you're walking to tree, especially being in the daylight, you can teach them about, things in the woods like game trails or deer tracks, or deer rubs, scrapes. And this is where some turkeys has been, and this is, a bunch of chewings where some squirrels have been chewing on nuts beside a tree and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot you could kind of bond and teach your kids while you're out there squirrel hunting as well. Plus teaching them like different things with the dog and stuff like that. It's really good for kids. I have 3 kids of my own, and my 2 oldest, they love it. One of them more about the dog than anything. The other one's more about killing. So, yeah. So it's one of those things. Like, there's a lot of different things your kid could get into while they're out there squirrel hunting that keeps them entertained and enjoying the outdoors, other than just sitting in a deer stand freezing, waiting on a deer to come by. They got something going on, and they're typically, you're not going to be cold while you're squirrel hunting. I don't care how cold it is outside. About 10 minutes of walking, you're warm. I'm sure it's similar in the rabbit hunting. Like, you're not just standing still for the most part.
That's right. Well, let me ask you to compare, because I think you said you coon hunted some too, but could you compare coon hunting to squirrel hunting? What are the things you like better about squirrel hunting than coon hunting, and maybe vice versa? But what really pushed you towards the squirrel hunting side versus the coon hunting side?
I'd say first off would be probably the more action involved, as far as you're making more trees, just because there's more game stirring. there's more squirrels. We have more squirrels than we got coons, for sure. And it's similar as far as the dogs, especially with the tree and curse side. They typically will throw out a locate and the tree, chop the tree on the tree like a coon dog will for the most part. That's what kind of helped me transfer over to the squirrel dog world because of that, because that's what drew me into the coon dogs was the tree part. Mm-hmm. I guess you say I enjoy a good dog that can run a track, but when one loads up on a tree and throws out a good locate and just starts chopping, it's just something about that I've always liked. And then transferring over to the squirrels with the tree and curves and the hounds, it's the same thing. They're just typically way less tracking on the ground. And I'd say the other thing is the different species of squirrels compared to you just got coons. Like up north, you got the big red fox squirrels. You got pine squirrels, and down here we have your grays. They have black squirrels up north, and they got some down towards like Missouri and stuff like that. And then we got our eastern fox squirrel. I want to say there's like 7 different species just on the east coast or east side of the United States, and then there's a few different others. There's some out in Arizona. There's several different species. There's a Grand Slam squirrel hunt a guy does every year. That's something I'd eventually like to do. But just having different kinds of squirrels, which going back to that fact, a gray squirrel and a fox squirrel, it's probably like your swamp rabbit and a cottontail. How they say they run totally different, or how rabbit dogs run theirs different.
That's right.
Those squirrels, they move different. Fox squirrel run on the ground for about 400 yards before it goes to a tree, where a gray squirrel typically won't run 10 foot before it goes up the tree.
Wow.
And a fox squirrel is a whole lot harder to tree by scent, I would say, compared to a gray squirrel. Much easier to tree by sight, obviously, just because they're big.
Well, let me ask you another question. You mentioned the different species and whatnot. Do you eat squirrel?
I eat gray squirrel, and I've eaten some of the northern red fox squirrel, but I've skinned out plenty of the eastern fox squirrels, and they typically die on pine cone and pine cone only. Mm-hmm. And the smell tells me I don't want to eat it, but I've heard people say they're pretty good. But to me, it just seems like it would be a very bitter meat just because of the smell, and like I said, the diet of strictly pine cones.
Well, those gray squirrels, I understand, can be kind of tasty, but what's your favorite way to cook them?
I like putting them in a crock pot and basically making like tacos out of it, or chopped barbecue. Fried is how I first, like my grandma and my mom and dad, that's how they used to do it, fried, but I'm not real big on fried food so much anymore these days, so I just prefer putting it in a crock pot. I'm just not cooking it all day.
That's making me hungry. Well, let me ask you kind of a philosophical question. So, because for me, there weren't many people around when I grew up that had squirrel dogs. There just weren't. We just didn't have many. We had more coon hunters and rabbit hunters than anything else. But I've noticed a shift towards squirrel hunting now. And I think for me, based on where I live, a lot of that may be because people are losing some of the bigger tracts of land that they had access to coon hunt. Because you need a good bit of land to turn one of those big coon hounds loose. I mean, they'll just keep going. So I feel like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like people are moving away from coon hunting and into squirrel hunting. And I don't know if that's something you see or not, but what does the future of squirrel hunting look like to you? You know, is that something you think will continue to grow? And where do you fit into that? Do you think you'll keep coon hunting? I know you mentioned your kids. Is that something that's important to you to pass on to your kids and grandkids someday?
Yeah, I see a lot of the coon hunters going to the squirrel hunting, and I think a lot of it is due to losing tracts of land, big tracts of land to coon hunt on. More people are willing to let you squirrel hunt on their land during the daytime than they are traveling through the woods at night too.
That's a good point.
I see a lot more as far as the squirrel hunting. As far as back in the day, how you were talking about it wasn't as popular. I think the main thing was it probably was a lot of people did it. It just wasn't popular as far as conversations or or competition wise, just because, like when you talk to a lot of the old timers that squirrel hunt now, and they tell you like the nicest squirrel dog they ever seen was a collie mix or a farm dog shepherd looking thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty much back in the day, if they had a dog that treed any kind of game, they killed it. And not the dog, but, shot whatever else it treed. And a lot of those dogs would tree squirrels, and they just feed the family with squirrels and stuff like that. And the rabbit dogs were more of like rabbit dogs and coon dogs were more like a pastime and feed the family kind of deal. Instead of squirrel dogs was just mainly just feeding the family. That's basically what it was for. Because like even now, like you tell somebody you competition squirrel hunt, they're like, well, I've heard of rabbit hunting and coon hunting, but I've never heard anybody competition squirrel hunting. That's kind of weird. But
Yep.
Like you said, it is coming around where a lot more people are getting into it, and I think too is because it's a little bit easier sport, or easier outdoor activity to get into as far as land being in the daytime. That helps out quite a bit, and the season's a pretty long season for the most part. And there's just so much more game. I mean, there are literally squirrels everywhere. I couldn't, except for game lands right now, I couldn't really think of a spot that wouldn't be a good place to go squirrel hunting at. Just because the game lands now, after deer season, they're hit pretty hard around here.
Well, I agree with you, Dustin. I think squirrel hunting is just going to continue to grow, and I'm curious to see what it's going to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now. I do. I think it's really going to have a big impact for all kinds of reasons. But as we start to finish up, because I've certainly learned a lot, and I really appreciate your time today. If people want to learn more about squirrel dogs or maybe these competition hunts, where are good places for them to search? Are there different registries out there, PKC, UKC? I'm not sure. You mentioned one earlier, and I can't remember what it was, but it was Squirrel Dog Association. Are there places that folks can go read more, learn more about squirrel hunting?
Yeah, so you got the NSD, which is National Sporting Dogs. This is a organization that's open to basically any breed. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a squirrel dog breed to enter into a hunt. But they're the ones that do the DNA and all that stuff. But these are basically like a PKC style hunt. They're elimination style hunts, and it's paid cash. It's not like a trophy system or nothing like that. Now, USDC, which is Ultimate Squirrel Dog Champion, or Ultimate Squirrel Dog Club, is the same thing, but it's like pro sport in the coon hunting world, if you will. It's higher stakes squirrel hunt. But there's other organizations. You got the UKC does have a squirrel dog division. Let's see, NKC has a squirrel dog, and then you have the Original Mountain Cur Breeders Association, which is mainly mountain curs. They have their own deal as well. But as far as finding out information, honestly, Facebook these days is about the best place, or the internet. You can just Google squirrel dog, and I'm sure there's going to be something to pop up. But I'm sure your listeners, somewhere around you, there's a local squirrel hunt going on in the next month by some organization. And the best thing to do is just maybe even at your local feed store, just ask around, and somebody can tell you they know somebody squirrel hunts. And it wouldn't be hard to get in touch with somebody. And 9 times out of 10, you ask a squirrel hunter if you can go with them, they're going to tell you yes, just because they enjoy letting people see their dog work. And they like getting people out there and enjoying something new for sure. That's probably one of my favorite things is taking kids out and taking people down to the sand hills, let them get their first fox squirrel, or letting kids shoot for the first time. I mean, it's some of the best moments of my life is getting people into new stuff like this, and it's just pretty enjoyable sport, I'd say.
Oh, I love it. Well, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you? Anything else that you'd like to add? Or I think that I heard you say something about you host squirrel competition hunts. Do you have any upcoming hunts that you'd like to plug?
Well, I got a hunt coming up this coming weekend. It'll be our last one before the World Hunt, and it's an NSD event. If anybody's interested in that, you could just look up on Facebook NSD, and you can get some more information from there. It's an open event to any kind of dogs. Like I said, NSD will take any kind of dog. If you think it'll tree a squirrel or you know it'll tree a squirrel, bring it out. It'll be a good time. We always have a good fun time, whether we're chit-chatting or out in the woods. It's always been a fun event. But no, I think we pretty much covered it all.
Well, thank you.
I can talk forever about squirrel dogs.
Oh, well.
I don't do any kind of hunting or fishing or anything. This is it for me. Is squirrel dog, and I'll dabble in a coon dog here and there.
Well, Dustin, I'm afraid to go squirrel hunting with you because I think I'd like it. I really do.
I'm telling you, man. It's cheaper because you ain't got to use no 410 shells or 12 gauge. If you're pretty decent with a 22, you can have a cheap season. I'll tell you that.
Wow. You just need one dog. That's all you need. You don't need a pack.
That's right.
Just one dog. Well, Dustin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us today and share a lot of good information about squirrel hunting. And you've certainly taught me something, and I'm sure other folks listening today will get a lot out of this. So I really do appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Buff in the Rough. And remember to like and subscribe if you want to be notified when we have new content available. And please send comments and suggestions to buffintherough@gmail.com.